Monday edition of the SportsMax Zone, and it's now time for the Concacaf Nations League. Action in the 2024-25 edition of the tournament continued into the weekend with matches from Leagues A, B and C taking place across the region. Let's get some of those results now. Turks and Caicos Islands beaten 4-0 by Belize. Barbados 3-2 over the Bahamas. The Cayman Islands losing 4-1 to St. Kitts and Nevis. Those are League C results. In League B, St. Lucia 2-1 over former Caribbean champions Curacao. St. Martin defeated Aruba 2-0. Grenada 2-0 over French St. Martin. Puerto Rico beaten 4-1 by Haiti. And Bermuda losing 2-3 to the Dominican Republic. Dominica scoring their first ever win over Antigua and Barbuda, I believe, in 7 head-to-head meetings. And St. Vincent and the Grenadines under their new coach Ezra Hendrickson defeating Montserrat by 2-0. Also El Salvador winning by 2-1 over Bonaire. Yeah. So disappointing results for the top 2 English-speaking Caribbean teams, talking about the Jamaica and the Trinidad and Tobago results. Jamaica 0-0 with Cuba, and TNT, they lost their game 4-0 to Honduras. And we have to say that from a Jamaica perspective, and we had previewed the game on Friday, Lige, that a 0-0 draw against Cuba was the last result that Coach Steve McClaren would have been expecting. Yeah.
Well, I think the last result he could have been expected would be a pretty bad last one. I think generally, I'm going to say it, I said it on Friday when previewing the game. I said that Jamaica would actually be pretty well suited to maybe Steve McClaren would bring over a couple of things from his time with Eric Ten Hag. And we saw that really playing out in the game. I think Jamaica, especially in the first 25 minutes, dominated well. I think that we saw some of the tactics that we usually employ or we usually associate with a Manchester United team, especially in possession, switching to a 3-1-6 shape, overloading Cuba's last line as they were playing with a 5-back, so using 6 attackers to really overload that line, and Jamaica created a lot of chances early. In build-up, he was pretty secure with Latibo there playing in that pivot role in midfield. I think around the 25th minute or so, we saw Cuba switch what they were doing defensively, step up a bit, and change to more of a 5-4-1 mid-block, which made it a bit difficult for Jamaica to progress the ball well, and an extra midfielder to drop in. And for the rest of the first half, Jamaica weren't doing too well, but we know that at the end of the first half, Cuba got that red card. So for the second half, it was pretty much comfortable sailing. And if we actually have an example of the shape that I'm talking about with Jamaica getting so many players going forward, and I think that it was a good game plan. I do think that obviously Jamaica did not get the win, and many of the people who only look at the results may look at that and say, it was a dicey game. But I think if Jamaica were to play that, here's the shape that I'm talking about. You can see Demari Gray getting the ball in for it to stop it right here. You can see this is 7 players with Amari Bell doing a underlapping run from centre-back, but take out Amari Bell, who's making that run in the left-hand half space. You have Casey Palmer and Jamal right in behind Antonio. You have Bobby Reed and you have Lemby Kisa holding the width on the right. So this was a constant shape for Jamaica throughout the game. And unless the Cuban midfielders or any team's midfielders are going to drop deep in that shape, it's always going to be a bit overwhelming for them defensively. So I think it was a good game plan by McClaren. But really looking at it, and even a chance like this, people are going to say that, Jamaica didn't win the game, so it's a bad result. But if you're creating chances like this pretty often, you're going to expect your strikers and your attackers to take it. So I wasn't too displeased with the performance whatsoever, but still, the finishing needs some work, and against Honduras coming up, I think it's going to be a pretty tough ask.
Yeah, and I get that, because a lot of experts I've spoken to since Friday night's game suggest that strategically and formation-wise, it was a pretty decent performance by the Jamaican team. But we can't get away from the fact that there were glaring misses from the men who are being paid to score goals. and even the structure that you just showed there with so much offense. So how bad was the finishing then? Because we have to remember too that Cuba played the entire second half with 10 men because they got a red card just before the halftime break. So just how bad was the finishing?
Yeah, it was pretty awful, actually, if we were to speak candidly. Jamaica had 21 shots, 7 on target. The team missed 3 big chances overall. That they also had close to 3 XG, 2.96 as well. Cuba didn't offer much threat. So, as I said, I think if this game were to be played 10 times, Jamaica score at least 2 or 3 goals, possibly 7 or 8 out of that 10 times. So I think it was just a bad finishing day. That's why I'm definitely not going to be too harsh on the team and their general performance. But if they're going to get results going forward, that's something that needs to be tightened up. And if you were to ask any coach if they would rather create the chances and not score, or not control the flow of the game and get a goal here and there, they would more than likely choose consistently creating the chances, because they know that is more process-oriented and that can lead them going forward.
Yeah, just unfortunate that we did not capitalize on the numerous chances that we got. You know, one of the things about Jamaica and Jamaica football-loving fans is that, you know, they're very passionate. I mean, the stadium was filled with people, and they get upset mainly at the coach first when things don't go their way. Like, they're not going to be so mad at the team, but the first person they say must go is the coach, right? And that's nothing new. We've seen it happen. I've been here for 5 years, and it has happened over and over and over. So it's something that's always in my mind when we don't get the result that the Jamaica fans want. And, you know, I listened to coach in that press conference, and he just reminded us it's been 3 days with the team, 1 match. So, you know, just to see what coach has been able to do with the team so far, are you pleased?
Yeah, I'm relatively pleased. And, you know, it's funny, Maria. You know, I was thinking, and I said, if this were a Jaime Helgrimson team, Jamaica's last coach, I'm almost pretty confident that this Jamaica team would have come away with the win, but I would have come here on the show and been critical of the performance.
Yeah.
Because I'm more process-oriented, so I would like to see Jamaica play in a certain way, controlling the game, which they did, 73% possession, created all the chances. I'd rather that in a 0-0 than a 2-0, 2-1 win, where it's a tennis match going back and forth. And so we know that I'd be less confident going into the Honduras game on the back of a performance like that than I would be seeing the Cuba game under Steve McClaren.
I just want to remind you that when it goes down to the results, they don't count how much effort you put. They count the goals and the points. And, you know, you can give as much effort. They're not going to give you a trophy for that coming up at the end.
Yeah, but if Pep Guardiola or Mikel Arteta or anyone else, he didn't always win. He
wins now.
Yeah, because of the process that he kept on going over and over. When he just came to City, your beloved Manchester City, he came and he came third. But then once his processes got...
Third is not bad, I just want to say.
I mean, you make it sound bad when certain teams come second, but either way, it's a process that's really important when it comes down to some of these teams. And I would like to see Jamaica stick with this process. And I think that if they were to replicate a performance like what they did against Cuba, I can't see why they don't beat Honduras comfortably.
So you think we have a good chance against
Honduras?
Definitely. Do you expect any major changes?
No, not really. I think maybe 1 or 2 personnel changes, because, you know, it's international football. The season just has started, so maybe a couple here and there, but nothing, no key changes.
Yeah, of course, that Honduras game coming up tomorrow night, the Hondurans took on Trinidad and Tobago on Friday, a 4-0 whipping of the Trinbagonians. Were they that good?
Based on what I've seen, yes and no. I think that Honduras were clearly the better team. I think that Honduras clearly created more chances. They controlled the flow of the game better, but I think in the first 20 minutes or so, we saw Trinidad get a couple of chances to really exploit Honduras on the transition and couldn't do so well. And then once this goal went in the 38th minute, I think Honduras really showed a bit of quality following this one. So, but if you look at it, Honduras took 19 shots in the game and only 5 were in the penalty area, only created around 0.91 XG, I believe. So it wasn't a game where they created a host of chances. So I think that yes, Honduras were really good, but they do have their weaknesses, and if a team defends pretty well against them, because one thing that we didn't see from the Jamaican team, for example, playing against Cuba, we didn't get to see Jamaica defend. We didn't see Jamaica in a low block. We didn't get to see Jamaica even in a mid block. It was just a high press, winning the ball back, keeping possession for most of the game. So,
yeah, and that's where I wanted to get to, because Cuba ranked 167 in the world. So when you think about the quality of the opposition in comparison to what the Reggae Boyz will face on Tuesday against Honduras, what challenges do you suspect the Hondurans will present that Cuba was not able to on Friday night?
One thing that Jamaica did really well in the first half, especially, and obviously in the second half, being a man up, was build up effectively. Cuba weren't able to get enough pressure on Jamaica, so the risk with playing with 6 players on the last line is that you have less players in build-up. So when you have less players in build-up, it relies more on player quality to build up the play, which is why we see, as I said, it's more of a Ten Hag thing. That's why we see Manchester United struggle to build up sometimes. Jamaica has not a natural pivot playing as their number 6 in Joel Latibodere. So I think if Honduras were to come out and press Jamaica high, Jamaica would need to drop 1 or 2 bodies to help him in build-up. We'd maybe have to see Andre Blake get involved in build-up to maintain the numerical advantage in build-up, but also the dynamics of play as well. So I think that would be my major issue. But if it comes down to a transitional game, I still see Jamaica having the edge.
One quick one. Is it a significant risk for the Jamaicans to continuously play the way they tried against Cuba on Friday against better opposition, given what you alluded to just now, the Joel Latibodere factor, but the general midfield factor as well, an area that has been relatively weak for the Reggae Boyz, especially in retaining possession of the football and passing accuracy and, well, I guess, midfield football?
I mean, it is a risk, but I think the system is set up to be risky.
Is it more of a risk for the Reggae Boyz given the deficiencies they have in midfield?
Yes, of course, I do think so, but I think that great systems alleviate the problems that could bring up. I think if the system is good enough, the players won't need to be that good because the system will alleviate all of those issues. Even if they're being pressed well by Honduras, if Latibodere is playing as a 6, but he constantly has 3 players in passing areas that he always has that diamond around him, he'll have that automation to pass the ball wherever. But if it's going to be more of what we saw previously under previous management, where the players have to make those decisions on the fly, then that's where the issue would come up in build-up. So I think if the system is good enough or built well enough, I don't think Jamaica will have an issue playing that way against better opposition.
We're going to get a quick comment from Steve McClaren, the Jamaica coach, ahead of the Honduras game. But before that, I want to ask you about the Honduras win over Trinidad and Tobago from a TNT perspective, because Derek King was in charge for his first assignment, replacing Angus Eve as a national coach. Inexperienced as a national coach, Derek King, and his biggest appointment up to this point as a coach. How disappointing do you think that would have been for him as a caretaker manager?
I think the scoreline would have been extremely disappointing, but I think up until that first Honduras goal in the 38th minute or so, I think Trinidad were in the game. They were, as I said, they had a couple of transitional opportunities which they didn't quite take advantage of. So I think it's disappointing, the result and how it will come across, because as I said, most people focus on the result rather than the performance, and when the result looks that bad, then it's always going to be a bit dicey. But I think once they get a win in their game tomorrow evening, hopefully they get that win for Mariah's sake especially. I think that, all will be relatively well again.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have to look ahead to that TNT Jamaica clash as well, because they're in that same group, and both new coaches involved with both teams. The second game of Jamaica's Nations League campaign will see them take on Honduras in Tegucigalpa. That will happen on Tuesday evening, and Coach McClaren has been stressing the importance of getting his first win with the Reggae Boyz.
3 points, it's a step towards qualification for the quarterfinals of the Nations League, so that's still the target. We played one game, and we played very well, didn't get the result. We need to really play well tomorrow and fight as a team to get a result to put us back in contention to qualify.
Yeah, his body language is not suggesting that he's overly worried. And I guess
Rightfully
listening
so.
to a lot of what he has said post-match, he's comfortable with how the team played. Obviously shattered that the goal-scoring duties where they flopped. But overall satisfied with the fact that they had so much control and exhibited so much possession in the game.
Yeah, and every coach would be, because that's the aim of football, especially in modern football. It's the aim is to have as much control as possible. The game has to flow through your team.
Yeah.
If the game is flowing through your team, then you have more say over how the game ends. And that's something that Jamaican teams have lacked over the years, and I'm sure that's something that he's looking to implement. Yes, it didn't get an ideal result, but I think, as I said, if that continues to be the process, then the results will come as well.
Yeah, how difficult will it be against Honduras?
I think it will be pretty difficult because Honduras obviously have more talent than the Cuban team. Honduras are a team that are comfortable in multiple phases of the game. They have a very experienced coach as well that has coached international football since the early 2000s. So this Honduras team, and they have more quality. Luis Palma, for example, for the Celtic winger, is one of the most talented players in Concacaf. So this Honduras team, as I said, more quality. They'll press Jamaica higher. They'll be playing at home as well, which is usually a pretty hostile place to go. But Jamaica have dealt with the Honduras atmosphere pretty well over the years. 6 games there, 3 wins, 3 losses. So I think that Jamaica have all the capabilities to get the result. But as I said, Jamaica will have to build up securely. You know, people will be focusing on finishing chances, but it has to start around the back, not only from a defensive sense and how they defend, but if Jamaica build up securely and break that Honduras press time and time again, leave those 5 or 6 players exposed to the Honduras backline, I think Jamaica will create even more chances, or have the scope to create even more chances than they did against Cuba. And if they do that, let's just hope that the strikers have their finishing boots on, because it could be a pretty high-scoring game.
Okay, Lish, thanks a lot. A reminder that you can catch Concacaf Nations League action on your home of champions throughout the duration of the tournament. And let's give you an idea of what comes up on Tuesday. Well, we have Grenada, St. Lucia, Aruba, Puerto Rico, and Guatemala against Costa Rica. Those are today's matches. And then on Tuesday, the Dominican Republic tackling Dominica, who, as we said, coming off that upset win over Antigua and Barbuda. Antigua and Barbuda taking on Bermuda, both matches on SportsMax. The second game, Bermuda, Antigua and Barbuda on SportsMax. Plus on SportsMax 2, TNT taking on French Guiana. Belize against Anguilla on SportsMax, and Honduras tackling Jamaica on SportsMax 2. Those matches coming up on Tuesday. We go to break. Still a lot more to come on the SportsMax Zone, and we'll be back after this.